ओम सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शंकरं लोकशंकरं शंकरं शंकराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। यद्यदाचरति श्रेष्ठः तत्तदेव इतरो जनः. It is said in Bhagavad Gita. That is, whatever a Shrestha Purusha does, the others also follow his example. Sri Rama was Parameshwara's avatara, and he wanted to set an example for everybody. And because we all respect, we all worship Parameshwara in the form of Sri Rama. And this particular Sri Rama, the Sri Rama Gita has come from Adhyatma Ramayana written by Vedavyasa, and it is as though it has come from Uttarakhanda. But the Sri Rama Gita is something that it has been written by Valmiki only. It has been the Adhyatma Ramayana as written by Valmiki is not here, but Adhyatma the Sri Rama Gita as taught by Mahadeva to Parvati has been given here. And then Sri Rama at the time of when they came back from Lanka, and Sri Rama told he was very against public opinion. The public opinion was that Sita stayed in Ravana's domain for a long time, and therefore how can he have Sita again? In this manner, there was a public opinion against Rama, and he was more like a king. He identified himself as a king. He wanted to do his duties as a king, and this is very important to understand. He was more interested in the public opinion, because the king has to always respect public opinion. If the king doesn't respect the public opinion, then the public opinion can go against him, and therefore, and then you have to set an example for the juniors, for the others also. Being Parameshwara, I don't think it was difficult for Sri Rama to set an example for others. And when they came, so Sita, when in the morning, the Sri Rama was talking to Lakshmana. Lakshmana, you take Sita and leave her in a forest. She wants to see all the old places, all the places that she had seen. Close to Valmiki ashram, you can leave her and then come back with the empty chariot. Don't bring her back alone, and don't bring her back, and you come alone. In this manner, he said. Then Lakshmana said, "Why do you want to be so cruel?" He says, "I am not. Don't say like that. Even I understand that public opinion is important. I understand that Sita she is pregnant, and she is going to give birth to a child. But then there are people who always are against public opinion. They're always against Sita, and therefore this public opinion I must respect, and therefore for the time being, please leave her there, and then maybe there is something that will be given by Parameshwara himself." And then what about Lakshmana? Lakshmana used to come in the morning and then prostrate at the feet of Rama and ask him many stories. Please tell me the old stories, etc. And here Sri Rama used to tell some stories, Puranic stories, the old stories, ancient stories. But these ancient stories will all come in the. And then now we are going to hear this discussion being held between Mahadeva and Parvati, and then as reported by and then it was reported by the Rama teaching Lakshmana was given by Mahadeva to Parvati, and then we hear it, and therefore we hear as though it is being taught by it is only being relayed by Mahadeva to Parvati. It is being we are only hearing as though that it is taught by Shiva to Parvati, but it is not taught by Shiva to Parvati. It is taught by Sri Rama to Lakshmana. Even as a teacher, he excels. He excels others, and therefore, as a child, he excelled, and as a king, he excelled. As a brother, he excelled, and and he served his father, his mother, everybody, and now he is going to serve. He is going to play the role of a teacher, and as a teacher also he excels, and therefore, please understand, Sri Rama is not a character. Sri Rama is a reality, and it's a hakikat hai, is a reality. Even though we didn't have all the stories, we didn't have recorded history, and therefore people think that it must be a character. It's not a character. If it is a character, then it would have been known as a character. But now it has come down to us to know that he is Parameshwara's avatara, and therefore, if somebody were to say, why not we accept Sri Rama as a good human being? I say, even as a good human being, he is godliness. Goodness is godliness, and therefore we invoke Parameshwara in his form, and therefore Sri Rama's form, and we think of Parameshwara in the form of Sri Rama, in the form of Sri Krishna, etc. And therefore there is nothing wrong in accepting Sri Rama as Ishvara, as avatara of Ishvara. Avatara is also in Avidya. I understand all that, but at the same time, but he is Parameshwara. The avatara has to be accepted because it's a goodness. Goodness is also dharma. Dharma cannot be followed unless he is Parameshwara ji. Dharma cannot be followed meticulously, and cannot be followed absolutely if unless he is avatara, unless he is Parameshwara. And therefore, as a jiva, he cannot follow dharma. Sometimes he follows dharma, sometimes he doesn't follow dharma. And therefore, as jiva who is born out of maya, sometimes he follows dharma, sometimes he doesn't follow dharma. But Sri Rama did not follow adharma at any time. And therefore, even when he told Lakshmana to take Sita and leave her in the forest, he was not being cruel. He was not being cruel. He was only being, as a king, he respected the public opinion. And therefore, it was his subjects. And therefore, whatever they said, he accepted. And therefore, he had to leave Sita in the forest. And therefore, don't think he was a bad husband or anything. He's wrong. He was more like a king at that time. As a king, he had to do his duty. And therefore, as a king, as a husband, of course, he used to love her so much. And therefore, when he, as a husband, you must judge him only before he lost her, before Ravana took her, and before he lost her. You have to respect. You have to assess his husbandness before she was lost to Ravana's cruelty, and therefore, and as a husband also, he was very good. As a king, of course, he respected the public opinion, and therefore because he respected the public opinion, he told Lakshmana to take Sita and leave her in the forest. And Lakshmana said, "How can you be so cruel?" He said, "Don't say a word against him, against me, because I myself understand that Sita is pregnant, and Sita went through a hell all through his life, and now I have to respect the public opinion, and therefore don't act like that I am being cruel or anything. I am not being cruel at all. I am only playing my role as a king well. And therefore, as a king, and you can. That is why Modi ji says you can't have the whole family as the king and the ministers, as a family of ministers. You can't have a family in the politics. If one member is there and the other members need not be there, and therefore here also, like Rama says, the Rama says to Lakshmana that I'm not being cruel. I'm only playing my role as a king properly, and this he says, and therefore as a husband also he was very good, and we have to assess his husbandness only before she was lost to Ravana's cruelty. Ravana robbed her, but he did not touch her, and therefore this understand, and therefore Sri Rama we accept as Ishvara, as Parameshwara, and now here we have to remember of Sri Rama as Parameshwara and also as a teacher. Parameshwara as a teacher is teaching Lakshmana. It comes from Adhyatma Ramayana, written by Veda Vyasa in the Uttarakhanda, in the 5th chapter it seems. It looks as though Swami Chinmayananda has written in the 5th chapter, but in the 5th chapter it may be true. Now Sri Mahadeva Uvacha. Sri Mahadeva says, Mahadeva means Shiva. Shiva says, Mahadeva means Shiva. Shiva says to Parvati, her consort, his consort. Tato Jagan Mangala Mangalatmana Jagan Mangalam. Jagan Mangala means you are a Sri Rama is a blessing to the world. Jagan Mangala, auspicious appearance. He was the Lord, he is Parameshwara, he is the source of the whole universe, and he has taken a form. And therefore Jagan Mangala means Mangala means auspiciousness. His appearance on the earth is auspicious to the earth. Jagan Mangala, Mangalatmana. And he himself he has a Mangalatma. Mangalatma means he is the divine self. Mangalatmana, divine self. He is a divine self. He is Parameshwara himself. He is Parameshwara himself appearing in the form of Rama, Sri Rama. Vidhaya Ramayana Kirti Muttamam. Vidhaya means having completed Sri Ramayana Kirtim. Ramayana Kirti means having lived his life throughout Ramayana, Uttamam, with the Ramayana, the glory of he having done his duties as having done the duties in the forest as well as outside the forest, in the house, in all the having completed having got the glory of having lived through Ramayana. Vidhaya Ramayana Kirtim Uttamam. Uttamam means the glory. Uttamam means the great. The great Ramayana Kirtim. The Ramayana Kirtim means the fame of Ramayana, having completed. Vidhaya Chachara. Chachara means then Veda Vyasa says, then Rama Chachara. Chachara means he practiced. He practiced or he lived a life of Purva Charitam, as lived by the ancient people, the ancient ancestors, as lived by the ancestors. Purva Charitam, Acharitam, Raghuttamaha. Raghuttamaha means the Raghuka Uttamaha. In the Raghukula he is Uttamaha. He is Raghuttamaha. Rajarshi Varjaihi. Rajarshita, Rajarshi Varjaihi means the great ones in his dynasty. They are called Rajarshis because even though they were kings, they were also sages. In fact, every king has to be even the prime minister has to be like a sage. Sage means he has to have the discipline, he has to have the yoga, he has to have the spirituality, he has to know the Brahmajnana, he has to have the Brahmajnanam also, and then alone he can be a king, he can be a just king. And therefore your happiness should not depend upon what you are doing, your happiness should depend upon yourself. Then alone you can do whatever you want to do. The good things. You can follow dharma only when you are not dependent upon dharma, please. You don't have to. Sometimes dharma gives you happiness, sometimes adharma gives you happiness. And therefore, if you are indulgent in the objects, then sometimes dharma gives you objects, sometimes adharma gives you objects. And therefore, you will be a jiva. You will be concentrating both on dharma and adharma. And but here Sri Rama always concentrated on dharma, and therefore that is because he was Parameshwara. As Parameshwara, he was not dependent upon indulgence of the objects, and therefore and therefore he is called a Rajarshi. Rajarshi means a king living like a sage. Okay, that is why he is called Rajarishi. Rajarishi means Raja plus Rishi, Rajarshi. It is called Gunasandhi. Raja plus Rishi, Rajarshi. Rajarshi Varjayi. Some of his in his dynasty, some of the Varyahi means the great ones. Varyahi means the great ones, the chosen ones, the real kings, the kings who lived like a sages, like the sages. And therefore the Rajarshi Varyahi Abhisevitam Yatha. Abhisevitam means as they lived their life. Like the Rajarshis lived their life, and the Sri Rama also lived his life after he came back from Lanka. Having overcome the Ravana, he killed Ravana, and then he comes back to Lanka, comes back to Ayodhya, and then in Ayodhya, he lives like his ancestral Rajarshis. Rajarshi Varjaihi Yatha Rajarshi Abhisevitam Yatha. Abhisevitam means lived. How they lived their life. In that manner, Rama also lived his life. And that he is clearly, Mahadeva is telling clearly, you have to live if you are a king, then you have to be a rishi also. Then you have to be a rishi. You can't be a Raja alone. Then you are indulgent. If you are a rishi, then you are not indulgent. Therefore, spirituality has to be first dinned into the mind of a person who has to become the king, who has to become the prime minister. He has to know the culture, he has to know the behavior, he has to set an example to the whole country. Then alone he can do it. Saumitrina Prishtaha Udara Buddhina Ramah Kataha Praha Puratane Subhaha Rajñah Pramattasya Nrigasya Shapataha Dijasya Tiryaktvamathaha Ragavaha. Saumitrina means Sumitra's son is called Saumitri. Saumitrina means to Lakshmana. Saumitrina means by Lakshmana. Prishtaha, being asked. Udara Buddhina. Who is Lakshmana? He has got Utkrishta Buddhi. Utkrishta Buddhi means a great intellect, mighty intellect. It's not just the mighty intellect means he was very good as a brother. He was very good as a son, as good as a husband, and he was also very listening to, very receptive to the teachings given by his brother Rama, Sri Rama. Saumitrina Prishtaha Udara Buddhina. He is called Udara Buddhi. Lakshmana is called Udara Buddhina. Saumitrina Udara Buddhina Prishtaha. That is how it should be taken. Saumitrina Udara Buddhina Prishtaha. Being asked by Saumitri, Lakshmana, who is a Utkrishta Buddhi, what did he say? Rama Kataha Praha Puratani Shubhaha. Ramaha Ramaha Praha Katha. Ramaha Praha. Praha means he said. He narrated Kathaha, many stories. Puratani, ancient stories. And good ones. Shubhaha. Shubhaha means the good ones. The good ones, he told the stories. The Shubhaha means, those who listen to them happens Shubhatvam. Shubham. Shubham means Shivam. Shivam means auspiciousness. They can grow out of their likes and dislikes. Such stories he tells. He told Rama Praha. Rama means Sri Rama. Praha means said. Puratanihi means the ancient. Kathaha means the stories. Narrated Shubhaha. 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 Shubhaha nahi Shubhaha. Shubhaha means the Shubham Denewala, the auspicious stories. He told him auspicious stories. And one of the stories says, Rajnaha Pramattasya. There was a king who was, he was inadvertent. He was a little indifferent. Nrigasya Shapataha. Nrigasya Shapataha. Nrigasya. Nriga is the name of the king. Shapataha, due to the shapa of a Brahmana, he became a chameleon, it seems. Dvijasya Tiryaktvam. Tiryaktvam means the animal. Tiryaktvam means animal. Animal means chameleon. Atha aha Raghavaha. Then Raghava said that he became a chameleon. Who became a chameleon? Nriga is a king. Nriga is a king, and he became a chameleon. Once it so happened that he was distributing the cows, cattle to the people, to the poor Brahmins and to the poor Brahmins, etc. And he was distributing the cows. And at that time, one cow went back to the king's herd, the remaining herd. And therefore, having given some were left for the king, and it went back to the original herd. And therefore, it was not king's mistake, but yet the Nriga, he was cursed. He was cursed to become what? A chameleon by a Brahman. By a Brahman, Dvija means a Brahmin, a Dvija. Janmana Jayate Shudraha. Everybody is born as a Brahmana. Everybody is born as a Shudra. The karmana dvijaha, and when you perform the karma, that is dvijaha. Brahmajnana brahmana. Brahmajnan se brahman hota hai. And therefore this dvija cursed the Nriga. What did he curse? May you become a chameleon. You don't appreciate my need, and therefore you didn't give me your the left cow, and that it has to come back to me. And it should not go back to somebody else. In this manner, he says, and therefore he curses him. Here, what is to be understood is Lakshmana has to understand. He is telling a story so that Lakshmana can be enlightened. See, sometimes everything in life cannot be just. Sometimes you have to go through some deeds, some actions, some pains which cannot be justified. And therefore, Nriga went through an unjustified chameleon, unjustified curse, because sometimes the prarabdham also is there. And therefore, you have to accept the prarabdham. And therefore, my losing Sita to Ravana also is my prarabdham. And the prarabdha has to be accepted by everyone, every person who has got the form. And therefore, everybody who has got a form has got prarabdha. And therefore, under that prarabdha, sometimes, even though it looks as though it is not right to go through the pain, but then you go through the pain. And you have to understand that in life, many problems are there. Some problems we have, and those problems can be suffered, taking them as a prarabdha. Nriga also was accepted it as a prarabdha, and therefore he was all right chameleon. Even though he became a chameleon, but he was a responsible king, and he was a very peaceful king because he accepted prarabdha. Nrigasya shapataha. In the same manner, even though Rama says to Lakshmana that in the same manner, a lot of pain has to be undergone. You have to leave Sita in the forest. I know it is very unhappy event, but then you have to go through it. It is your lot to go through it. It is your prarabdha to go through it. And this has to be understood by you. And therefore, this kind of maturity comes only when you come to accept the pains. Accepting the pains makes you matured, please. The pains are always God's wishes. They're due to prarabdham. We have to accept the pains, and therefore सौमित्रिणा पृष्टः उदारबुद्धिना रामकथाः प्राह पुरातनीः शुभाः राज्ञः प्रमत्तः means little inadvertent. Apramatto bhava. Don't be inadvertent. It is said in Kathopanishad, apramatto bhava. Apramatto bhava means don't be indifferent. Don't be inadvertent. Be always clear in your mind what you have to do. And therefore, apramatta. This person was little pramatta. He was little inadvertent. He distributed the cows. And where does the cow go afterwards? It is up to it is not his mistake. And if he had taken if the Dvija has taken the cow, that is it is up to him to keep it with him. And if he left the cow, the left cow would have again come back to the mother herd. And therefore you have to always accept the pains as prarabdham. And therefore inadvertency, it was not king's mistake, but still poor Brahmana cursed him. Dvija cursed him to become a chameleon, and he had to accept it, and by accepting it he was peaceful. Drigasya Shaptaha Dvijasya Tiryaktam Athaha Raghavaha. Raghavaha means Raghukulottamaha. Raghavaha, Raghu, Rama. This Raghavat said that he became a chameleon due to the curse given by a Dvija. Janmana, everybody is born as Shudra because there is neither karma nor jnanam. But with karmana, Dvijaha, when you follow the good karma, then you have become a Dvija. When you follow the Upanayanam, etc., then you become a Dvija. And then when you get the knowledge through jnanam, you become a Brahmana. And therefore, here it is said, who can curse? Only a Dvija can curse, not a Brahmana can curse. A Brahmana is one who understands one thing, that in all the individuals, there is only one Paramatma, and that Paramatma is in the form of a Jiva and a Sukhi Jiva. He is in the form of Dukhi, he is in the form of Dukhi Jiva, he is in the form of a mosquito, he is in the form of a human being also. And therefore, there is that fundamentally there is justice. Fundamentally there is justice, please. And that justice has to be understood only in this manner. That is only Parameshwara that is there in all the forms, in all the Sukhis, in all the Dukhis, in all the small creatures, in all the big creatures. You say a cow is difficult, it is standing in the rain. You may say, but you are sleeping in the Rajai, but then you are comfortable and the cow is uncomfortable. But the Parameshwara is there in the form of the cow, uncomfortable cow. And the same Parameshwara is there in you as comfortable Jiva. And therefore, there is the same being is there in all the Jivas. And therefore, there is no injustice. There is justice only, please. And in this manner, you have to understand. Don't say that there is injustice. There is always justice in this world. And that justice is in the form of the same Parameshwara, the same divinity is there in all the forms. And that is the justice, please. Kadachit ekante, kadachit means sometimes. Ekante means when it was solitude, quiet. Ekante, upastitam prabhum. Upastitam prabhum. Prabhum means the one who is prabhavati. Prabhavati iti prabhum. Prabhavati means he is in prabhavitam. He is capable of. He is Prabhavati also means he is born. He is Parameshwara is born as Jiva. Parameshwara is born as Sri Rama, as Avatara, and that is called Prabhu. And therefore, Upastitam, sitting in his own Gaddi. Kadachit Ekantem Upastitam Prabhu. We always say the Parameshwara as Prabhu. Prabhu means the one who is capable of blessing you, the one who is capable of rescuing you from difficulties. Because the pain is so, he can only rescue you from difficulties. He is called Prabhu. And therefore, When you remember Parameshwara, you can always remember him as Prabhu, as Prabhu, as Prabhu. Ramam Rama Lalita Pada Pankajam. Ramam Rama Lalita Pada Pankajam. Saumitrihi Asadita Shuddha Bhavanah Pranamya Bhaktya Vinayanvito Bravit. Ramam Kadachid Ekante Upastitam Prabhum. And who is that Rama? That Rama Lalita. Rama Lalita means, Rama means Lakshmi, served by Lakshmi. Rama Lalita. Lalita means served by Lakshmi. Pada Pankajam means the lotus feet. The lotus feet that the Lakshmi had served him because he is Vishnu's avatara, and therefore Bhagavan Vishnu is not other than Parameshwara, please. Brahma is, as the source is the Brahma, as the support is the Parameshwara himself is the Vishnu, as the resolving point is called the Mahadeva, Shiva is the resolving point. All the Srishti Sthanam, Sthiti Sthanam, Laya Sthanam are only one Ishvara, and therefore these are all roles. Parameshwara as Vishnu, as the support of the universe, as the server of the universe, and that is called Bhagavan Vishnu. And therefore, don't think they are different gods. They are all indeed the same Parameshwara, please. And therefore, Bhagavan is invoked. We invoke Parameshwara's grace in all human forms, in all animal forms, in all trees, in all the inert things also, because there is no there is not an atom in which Parameshwara's presence is not there. Your existence is not there, and therefore it is said Rama Lalita Pada Pankajam. Pada Pankajam means, Pada means the feet, Pankajam means the lotus. The lotus feet that were served by Lakshmi, that Rama, he was sitting in the Ekanta, in his Gaddi, and that Prabhu, Kadachid Ekante Upastitam Prabhu, Ramam, Rama Lalita, Pada Pankajam, Saumitrihi. Saumitrihi said, Saumitri means Lakshmana, Asadita Shuddha Bhavanaha. Asadita Shuddha Bhavanaha means with clean Antakarna Shuddhi. Asadita means gained. Shuddha Bhavanaha means Antakarna Shuddhi. Shuddha Bhavanaha, the clearest feeling, the best feelings, is called Shuddha Bhavanaha. Pranamya Bhaktya Vinayanvitaha, with great humility. Pranamya, having saluted. Bhaktya, with devotion. Vinayanvitaha, with humility. Abravit, he said to Rama, hey Rama. What did he say to Rama? He said, Tvam Shuddha Bodhosi. You are indeed Shuddha Bodhaha. Shuddha Bodhaha means you are indeed Anubhava Swarupaha. In fact, the best way to understand the truth is Anubhava Swarupaha. Anubhava Vishayaha is non-separate from Anubhava Vishaya. Anubhava Swarupaha. Without your being there, there is no Anubhava, please. And therefore, every Anubhava, you are indeed of the nature of Anubhava Swarupam. Therefore, there cannot be Anubhava. There cannot be Anubhava unless you are there. The experiencer there has to be there. And that experiencer is indeed of the nature of Anubhava itself. And therefore, Shuddha Bodhosi means you are indeed Anubhava Swarupa. Shuddha Bodha means you are indeed Kevala Jnanam, Jnana Swarupa, Anubhava Swarupa. Jnana Swarupa, call it Jnana Swarupa or call it Anubhava Swarupa, it means the same thing, please. Shuddha Bodhosi. Sarvadehinam. Sarvadehinam means you are the, in all the bodies, you are there as the, in all the jivas, you are there as the Shuddha Bodha. You are indeed Jnana Swarupa, Anubhava Swarupa. You are indeed Anubhava Swarupa. Atmasi, and you are indeed the self of, all the jivas. You are indeed the self of all the jivas. As Jnana Swarupam, as Anubhava Swarupam, you are indeed in all the jivas. As Jnanam, as Anubhava Swarupam, you are there in all the jivas. Atmasi, Adhishoshi. Adhishaha means the Adhishaha means Parameshwaraha. Adi Ishvaraha. You are indeed Parameshwara also. At the same time, you have taken the form, but you are not you have not become a jiva like other jivas. They are under the spell of Maya, whereas in your case, Maya is under your control, and therefore you take avataram, and that is why the one in whom Maya is in his control is called avatara. In ordinary jivas like you and me, they in all the cases, the Maya is not in our control. As jivas, we are under the control of Maya, and therefore, Adhishoshi, you are indeed Parameshwara. Nirakritihi, you are formless. Swayam, you are indeed yourself are formless, and you are Swayam means you are indeed formless. You are indeed unlimited. You are indeed Brahma. You are indeed Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. You are Brahma Swarupam, Anantam Brahma. You are Adhishoshi, you are Parameshwara. As the source of the creation, you are Parameshwara. As the form, you are indeed as a Jiva. As a form, you are indeed Jiva. As the Paramatma, you are indeed as conscious being alone. As free from the body, you are indeed Brahma Swarupam. You are indeed formless. Pratiyase, Swayam Pratiyase, you look as though you have a form. You are indeed formless. You look as though with a form. And that form you have taken yourself. You have chosen that form. And therefore, Pratiyase, Jnana Drisham. And you Jnana Drisham Mahamate. And then Pratiyase, you can, even though you appear to have a form, but then you can be understood by Jnanavatam. Jnanavatam means by the wise. The wise can see you. Mahamate, hey Mahamate, oh mighty intellect Rama, they can understand you as formless, and they can see you as the formless. They can understand you as formless. Padabja, Bringahita, Sanga Sanginam. Bringa means bee. Is called Bringa. Bringa means bee. So those who depend upon Sanga Sanginam means Satsanga. Satsanga Sanginam. Sanga Sanginam means Satsanga Sanginam. The devotees come to your feet like the bees are are attracted to sugar candy. In the same manner, the devotees flock to you to your lotus feet by like the bees, and you enjoy their company, and you enjoy their satsang. You enjoy the satsang with them. You enjoy teaching them satsang. You give them satsang. Padabja means the lotus feet. Padabja, your lotus feet. Bringa means the bee. Ahita means attracted. Sanga Sanginam. Sanga means Sanginam. Sanga means Bringa. Ahita Bringa Sanga. Sanga means Satsanga. Sanginam means Satsanginam. Those devotees who come to you like the bees attracted to you, like the bees, they are attracted to your lotus feet, and you enjoy their company, and that is your satsang. And you don't require any. There is no need for you. You are independent of them, but they are not independent of you. They love to hear you, and therefore they come. They are all your bhaktas. You are not anybody's bhakta. You are Parameshwara. You are only present. You are only present, and you can be. You can be. You are only being there. So as Sat, Sadeva Swamidamagrasivi Ekameva Dvitiyam. You are a non-dual being, and as though you are a non-dual being. But then, as the source of the universe, you are Parameshwara, and as Parameshwara, you you take avatara in order to set an example for others. In order to set an example for others, you have come, and therefore you are setting an example for everybody, and you are setting an example for the kings also, that how a king should live. A king should not have any attachment. A king should not have ragadveshas. A king should look after his subjects, and therefore he was only setting an example as Parameshwara. He was setting an example for others, and therefore he was independent of the bhaktas, whereas the bhaktas were not independent of Sri Rama. That is just as we, the jivas, we cannot be independent of Parameshwara, whereas Parameshwara can be independent of us. The jiva, as jivas, we have to depend upon our talking, our seeing, our tasting, our touching or smelling. Any vyavahara presupposes the presence of Parameshwara. Presence means just presence. It to be is the presence. Just as the wave presupposes the presence of water, in the same manner, the Parameshwara, whatever vyavahara the jiva does, they presupposes the presence of Parameshwara, and that is why we describe Parameshwara as karmadhyakshaha. We are able to do karmas presupposing his presence. We are able to get the results also presupposing his presence. And without his presence, there is no life. And therefore, that I see, that I hear, that I taste, that I touch, that I smell, that I talk, that I walk, that I eat, that I go to sleep, all these things are due to the presence of Parameshwara as my actuality, as one's actuality. Jiva's actuality is that he is Parameshwara. Sadeva Swami Idamagrasi Ekameva Advitiyam Tat Satyam Sa Atma Tatu Tvamasi. That the what, that Parameshwara, the what it is said by the Vedanta. And therefore, the Upanishad itself says that the Parameshwaratvam is the actuality of Jiva, of every Jiva. And Parameshwara himself says, Aham Sarvasya Chaham Hrudi Sannivishtaha. I am there in the heart of everyone as Aham Iti. Sarvasya Chaham Sannivishtaha. And then in presupposing the presence of Parameshwara only, the awareness alone, there is jnanam, and there is memory, there is forgetfulness also. Because forgetting also is very important sometimes. Sometimes even to forget is very important. Even though you don't forget the important details, that's not right. But then forgetting sometimes, forgive and forgetting the enemies is better. You don't to think of the forgetting the objects is necessary also. Sometimes if they are objects of your likes and dislikes, it is better to forget them. And therefore, even that forgetting is not possible without presupposing the presence of Parameshwara. And the more of it we'll see in the next class. Thank you very much. And we have started Sri Rama Gita, and then it will all be like Vedanta, please. And that is why it is also called Shruti Sara Sangraha. It is also called Shruti Sara Sangraha. It is also called the essence of all the Vedanta. And therefore, you don't think it is going to be a story. I am not a storyteller. I am a Vedanti. And therefore, you will have to hear Vedanta. Ultimately, you have to hear your existence. You are indeed Anubhav Swarupam. You are Anubhav Swarupam. Without your existence, there cannot be an Anubhava. And therefore, you are Anubhav Swarupam. And whatever you can objectify is Anubhav Vishayam. Whatever you can't objectify and yourself is Anubhav Swarupam. Anubhav Vishayam is non-separate from Anubhav Swarupam. And therefore, everything is Anubhav Swarupam alone. The whole universe is Anubhav Swarupam alone. It looks as though Anubhav Vishayam, but it is Anubhav Swarupam. It is non-separate from Anubhav Swarupam. In this manner, it has to be understood. And therefore, and the more of it we will see in the next class. Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnas Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.